For the 175th and final time, the portal has opened. If you are inclined to worry and or panic, however, let me reassure you that the show isn't going away. It's just getting a makeover, and part of that makeover is going to be a new name. More about that in a minute, but right now, please go ahead and go on up to the bar here in the Drum and get yourself the beverage of your choice. All right, it looks like everybody has found a seat and gotten a drink, so we will proceed with episode 10 of season 10 of what is, for the next 40 minutes or so, still the Witches and Wizards Portal. The new name of the show is, I'm not going to tell you. You will have to tune in 2 weeks for episode 1 of season 11 if you want to find out, because that's the first time I will be revealing it here on the show. Now, there may be other ways of finding out what it is beforehand, but I will leave that to your imagination and ingenuity. I want to start with the contest, the haiku contest, poetry contest as it morphed. I actually had 2 people enter, and both of them sent in haikus. Joe from Scotland sent in 2, and I am declaring her first effort to be the winner. And it goes like this. Try but you cannot drink more scumble than Nanny. Just you ask Granny. And I murdered that first line because I can't pronounce C-A-N-N-A-E with a Scots accent, which Joe can do as easily as falling out of bed because she is Scottish. In any case, congratulations, Joe. You have won yet another custom episode. This is Joe's custom episode win number 2, and it is her 3rd contest win overall, if memory serves. So, well done, that woman. And onward, all of us, in this week's exploration of the faces, races, places, spaces, and other words that end in aces of the Discworld, that world and mirror of world that exists only because every reality curve must have its far end. And, I don't think anybody has ever calculated how many standard deviations out from the center of the reality normal curve we actually are out here visiting the disk, but it doesn't really matter unless you're a statistician, in which case you have no business in the Mended Drum anyway. And of course, I'm kidding. We love you, statisticians and accountants, and all others of that ilk as well. The world would be a poorer place without its drum knots, and we are indeed very happy to have you with us. The book that I am holding up is the complete Ankh-Morpork City Guide, and I'm making reference to it because I wanted to point out that there are 8 1/2 pages in this city guide. 8 1/2 pages that are devoted to public houses, inns, and taverns. And I would say that on average there are probably about 30 establishments listed on each page, which, if my math is correct, means that we're ending up with upwards of 250 inns, taverns, and public houses. And the Mended Drum is the most famous of the lot, having appeared as it did in the very first book, The Color of Magic, when it was the Broken Drum. There are so many others, however, and many of them, I think you might say, serve particular tastes. They are specialist establishments or establishments that specialize in one thing or another. There is a place called the Armless Leper, and I've never been in there, and I don't know anything about it other than the name. I am trying to get some more information about it from my local sources, but so far, no luck. And then over on the street of cunning artificers, appropriately enough, there is an establishment called the Artful Angel. And it is billed as a large hostelry, the meeting place for the Guild of Artificers. Good cask-conditioned ales and a respect for craftsmanship permeates the establishment, even to the steak and kidney pudding it serves every Saturday. I am planning on going in and sampling that steak and kidney pudding tomorrow, and I will let you know next week what I think of it. And then if we head on over to Broadway, where it intersects the Street of Alchemists, there is a place called the Cut Purse. And as you might imagine, it is a favorite hangout for members of the Thieves Guild with a name like that, even though it is on the Street of Alchemists. And it is said to be one of the safest places in town to hang your hat and have a quiet drink, as long as you have already purchased your Thieves Guild subscription package. And then the last establishment that I would like to mention today is a place over on Seven Sleepers Returnment Way that I actually considered briefly as being a good place to host the show. Ironically, it's called the Gravedigger's Arms, and it has a large function room that's used for wakes, pre-death parties, and occasionally coroner's courts. And the pre-deaths parties thing, they were pretty tight-lipped about. I thought, of course, naturally that it was for wizards, because wizards know in general when they are going to die. But apparently that isn't the case. They wouldn't tell me who it is that such parties are generally held for. And so I left it at that. And I considered the place because I was told that it is really a much jollier establishment than the name might suggest. And I did go over and take a look at it, and they do have a nice function room, large space. Not quite as big as the space we have here in the Drum, but ultimately I decided that that name might be a little bit off-putting for new listeners to the show in particular. And there are many, many, many other fine establishments as well, of course. We could spend the better part of a year visiting them all, and we would certainly end up with a poorer purse and a richer waistline. And although we are not going to go today, you might enjoy sometime when you have a little extra time touring the post offices of Ankh-Morpork. Moist von Lipwig has certainly brought the post office back in a big way. In addition to the central post office, Widdershins Broadway, there are now post office substations at 5 Ways, the Butter Market, Treacle Mine Road, Cockbill Street, Monkey Street, Basket Way, Gleam Street, Short Street, the Soak, Lower Broadway, Salis Street, Park Lane, Long Wall, 5 and 7 Yard, Kingsway, Schoon Avenue, Brookless Lane, Water Market, Knapp Hill, and Edgeway Road. And if you are familiar with Ankh-Morpork, you will certainly recognize and realize that there indeed are post offices all over the city now. The post office has returned to its heyday and then some. And of course it is the stamps, that tremendous innovation in the post, which has played a great role in the revival of the Ankh-Morpork post office. And I challenge you to say Ankh-Morpork post office 3 times real fast. And you can practice that if you wish. stretch your legs, get another drink, and we'll be back in just a couple of moments with part 2 of the final episode of The Witches and Wizards Portal. Welcome back to part 2 of this week's show, everybody. Over on our Discord server, Friends of Medieval Gnome Productions, the person, place, or thing game is still going strong. And in this last round, we had to figure out the name of a person. And it was tough. We finally got established, I guess fairly quickly, we got established that it was an Ankh-Morpork businessman, a tradesman, or a merchant of some sort. But from there, it took a lot of questions from those of us who are playing to finally get it narrowed down. And when you stop and think about how many inns and taverns there are, as I was talking about before the break, it shouldn't be that surprising. But we are having a lot of fun with that game, and I invite you to come join the Discord server if you want to get involved with that, or if you just want to talk with other fans of the show and of Sir Terry's work in the Discworld. And again, the name of the page, or the server as Discord calls them, is Friends of Medieval Gnome Productions. That brings me to the ultimate businessman in the Discworld, if you will, and that is Death. I am rereading Reaper Man in anticipation of next week's Pratt chips. And the thing that has struck me most about it this time around, as far as the Death part of the story, is how much Death's experience as Bill Dorr humanizes him. He had never felt, he never understood what it was like to be alive, what it was like to feel the passage of time, and what it was like to know that one was going to die. And to use a technical term, this kind of freaked him out. And it certainly gave him an appreciation for the human condition that he never would have been able to gain otherwise. And as a result of his experiences in Reaper Man, we see him undergo that existential crisis in soul music when he finally says to Albert one day, "What's it all about?" Really, when you get right down to it, and takes off to, among other things, join the Klatchian Foreign Legion and leaves Susan holding the bag. So there is a nice thematic progression there between the two books. There are also some other elements that the two books have in common, and one of them is what I'm going to call a parallel plot development. In Reaper Man, we have Bill Dorr's experiences working for Miss Flitworth when the auditors have managed to get him retired from his job as Death. And then we have Wendell Poon's experiences as what I guess you could call an undead, but he is one of the millions of living things that have died, and there is no death to take them, and so they're just kind of sloshing around, manifesting in all kinds of ways, including the animation of things which are not technically alive, like doorknobs and spearheads. And all this imbalance and disturbance in the nature of things also brings about the bizarre parasite city thing that hatches and grows and eats the wizards, and which Wendell and his new friends have to go in and straighten out. And those friends are members of something that's called the Fresh Start Club. That's run by good old Red Shoe. And it isn't until much later in the series that we learn a lot of Reg's backstory. But when we do, it explains more about why he is the way he is in Reaper Man. And the way he is in Reaper Man is that he is an advocate for dead rights. He wants to stop vitalism now. Undead, yes. Unperson, no. Reg is very fond of socio-political agitation. And Wendell ends up meeting Reg and the Count and Countess not far out, and Schleppel the bogeyman, and Lupin the man-wolf, and that's like a wolf man, except it's negative version, the other way around. He's a wolf for 3 weeks of the month and then a human for the other one. But that little ragtag group has to go into this giant parasite city thing that has grown up outside Ankh-Morpork and free the wizards, rescue the wizards, and destroy this thing. And when they're in there, I always get this really strong Aliens vibe from it. Like when Ripley and the crew are trying to escape the aliens. And all of this stuff with Wendell Poons happens because Death takes a holiday, but in Reaper Man it's a very involuntary holiday. He is forced to retire. The auditors do this because they think that Death has become too human and there are irregularities. So they campaign to have him retired, and that happens, but they're not ready to put a new Death into the lineup, so to speak. And during that interregnum, that time without a Death running the show, that's when Wendell's problems start, and that leads to the whole alien parasite city problem. And then we go back to Death's experience as Bill Dorr, and he has to, in a sense, fight the new Death in order to get his job back. Now, in soul music, you have roughly the same parallel plot development, except that Death has walked off the job. He's having an existential crisis. And this time, unlike in Reaper Man, there is someone else to take his place, and that is Susan Stohelet, his granddaughter. And Death walks off the job and sticks Susan with it just about at the time that this phenomenon that isn't supposed to be on the disc shows up through the channel of a young druid and the guitar that he picks up to play because his harp is destroyed. And Susan becomes somewhat enamored of the young man, and that complicates her job as a stand-in for her grandfather immensely. But she also realizes that something very strange is going on because she wanted to save young Impy Kellen when his sand ran out, but it was actually this wild music, this soul music, that beat her to it. And so Susan is in a position analogous to that of Wendell Poons in Reaper Man, of having to solve this mystery which involves the death of the disc world, and which the death of the disc world is not there immediately to solve because in the first case he has been retired forcibly, and in the second case because he has taken early retirement, if you will, because he needs to find himself. So Sir Terry uses a sort of parallel plot development device in each of the books, Reaper Man and Soul Music, but there are also some major parallels between the two books. And I suspect he kind of planned it that way when he wrote Soul Music. He may have even been thinking about it when he wrote Reaper Man. What we're thinking about is saying farewell to Season 10 and to the Witches and Wizards portal, and inviting you back in 2 weeks for the first episode of Season 11 of... I'm not going to tell you what the name is going to be. And I already told you I wasn't going to tell you. So don't feel disappointed now. Do commit lots of random acts of kindness, though. Stay safe. Stay sane, and mind how you go. Unlike most cats, the girls have never showed any interest in climbing in paper bags. However, Ivy has decided that she likes them to lie upon on the floor. And so my wife placed this one on the floor next to our chest of drawers. And as you will see in a moment, the results have been nothing but remarkable. They have been playing incessantly in competition for control of the bag, and not only has this resulted in some wrestling quality of which we have not seen in quite some time, but it also results in some very energetic chasing when one of them will run for it and the other one will chase them all the way through the living room and the kitchen down to the end of the hall and then back to the bag where the wrestling will resume. So without further ado, Medieval Gnome Productions presents